Good evening, everybody. Thanks for your patience. Sorry about the technical difficulties. We'll work through it as best we can. I do believe we're in good shape at the moment. So welcome, everybody. Glad you guys could show up and speak your piece. I will ask one more time now for the record, if everybody who's not a board member, if you could mute yourself until called upon, that would be greatly appreciated, because these things are very sensitive for anybody who's not familiar with it, and they literally pick up every time you move, talk, sneeze, anything. So, and it is a distraction. So if you could mute yourself, that would be fantastic. When you're called upon, you can unmute yourself and speak. Feel free. Dave Hearn has told me that he represents the people at 115 Garfield Ave. I'm assuming Joe Mon is here in regards to that case. So Joe, if you want to speak, I will certainly call on you. So just give me 2 seconds. I'm going to let Dave go in a minute, and we'll get going here. So welcome, everybody. It's Tuesday, September 15th. First case is case number 20-14, property located at 115 Garfield Ave in a general residence district. The meeting's being conducted digitally using GoToMeeting. Participation may be accessed to a computer, tablet, smartphone, and whatever else you can find. This applicant requests a special permit under sections 5.4 and 5.4.4 of the zoning bylaws to allow alteration of an existing single-family dwelling that does not conform to side yard setback requirements and is situated on a lot having less area, frontage, and lot width than required in the general residence district, to permit the construction of an addition to said dwelling, together with such other or further relief as the ZBA may deem appropriate in the circumstances. The applicant also requests variance under the general laws of Massachusetts to allow construction of an addition to an existing non-conforming as to side yard setback, single-family dwelling located on a non-conforming lot as to area, frontage, lot, and lot width, pursuant to section 4.0 of the zoning bylaws. Plans are on file with the ZBA. It can be viewed any time during business hours, Monday through Thursday, 8 to 4. With that, I do have I believe we all got recently, but I do have the affidavits in regards to this. The publications were done on August 27th and September 3rd, so I believe we're good there. And Mr. Hearn, if you want to state your case, please do so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, David Hearn Jr., 470 Washington Street here in Norwood. I'm here this evening representing Michelle Fraioli and Christopher Fraioli, who are with me in my office right now and available to answer questions. And this case involves their home at 115 Garfield Ave, a property they've owned for about 7 years or so. It's a single-family home in a general residence district, and they would like to add on to the house to provide more space for themselves and their family. They have 3 children, but they find that they need to come before the board under section 5.4 because we're dealing with a lot that is of insufficient frontage and lot width and insufficient area. And the existing dwelling does violate side yard setbacks. What they're proposing is an addition that will add significantly to the size of the house. It goes beyond the 25% limitation that would have allowed the building inspector perhaps to grant a permit. But the addition as proposed itself will not violate any of the dimensional requirements. I've given you, and I hope you have, a memorandum that responds to the various conditions that you have to consider with respect to special permits. And we'll certainly rely on that. But this is a case where, and you've seen this type of case before, where folks want to add on to their home, and even though the addition will conform to zoning, the fact that the lot is non-conforming, that the existing structure is non-conforming, is what brings them here. Section 5.4 of the zoning bylaw allows for a board to grant relief here, special permit relief, particularly where you determine that the proposed modification to the structure will not be substantially more detrimental than the existing non-conforming structure. And I would submit to you that this is an addition that will be a very nice and attractive addition to that property. It will be beneficial to the neighborhood. Anytime you add value and add attractiveness to the property, you're generally helping the neighbors. The lot size we're dealing with now is 7,084 square feet, where 10,000 is required. There's nothing that can be done about that. That's the size of the lot. It's been that way for a long time. The building height is going to be about 23 feet. 30 feet is allowed. No violation there. The lot width that we're dealing with is 55 feet, where 90 feet is required. And the frontage is also about 55 feet. Again, 90 feet required. So those are deficiencies that came with the lot. We're not changing anything with respect to that. The yard setback will be have no change. It exceeds by almost 10 feet the requirement of 20 feet. The rear yard right now is about 84 feet deep, and it will be 57 or 58 feet deep when all is said and done, leaving plenty of rear yard. The side yard on the left, as you look at the house, does violate the requirements of 15 feet. But where the addition is going to be built, it will have 13.3 feet. So we're not worsening or exacerbating any nonconformity. On the right-hand side, there's 15.3 feet, but it's existing conditions, and we're going to be not violating it because if we're less than 15 feet high, we're able to go within 10 feet, and that's what they're proposing to do with respect to that sideline. So this is a matter where I think the board could find that while relief is necessary, relief would be appropriate. It will fit in with the neighborhood. It will be an improvement to the property. It will add to the usefulness of the property, add to the value of the property, and will not create any detrimental conditions. My clients have discussed the matter with several of their neighbors and have had heard no negative comments. They have heard several positive comments, particularly from their direct abutters to either side and to the rear. They're across the street from the Callahan School, so there was nobody really to ask over there. But as far as the residential abutters go, they have all indicated their support for the project, and I think some of them are here this evening participating in the meeting. So, Mr. Chairman, happy to take any questions you might have. My clients, as I said, are here if I need to confer with them or we need them to answer any of the questions. That is what the case is about, and I turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you. So I'll open it up to questions from the board members. Why don't we start with Mr. Perry? We'll do our best, Joe. Any questions, Joe?
I have a couple. Can you hear me?
Yes,
I can hear you, Perry.
All right, you can hear me. My concern usually, not just on this particular application, but where there's a number of non-conformities. I try to do the best I can for the applicants, but I wonder, where there's a special permit and a variance granted. And I've been involved in a few towns where once they got these items approved, it went on the market. So hopefully this is somebody that's planning on staying in town. And I'd like to hear the other board members, but I do have a concern with the number of requests for it.
Mr. Chairman.
Dave, do you want to respond to that?
I can certainly answer Mr. Perry's question. My clients are doing this for themselves and for their family. This isn't a fix up the house and let's go sell it. This is a house that they live in and they plan to live in it, but they need the space. As far as the relief requested, As you know, I often file requests for special permits and as a belt and suspenders approach, a request for variance. I think this is the type of case where the special permit rules and the finding requirement under section 5.4 would apply. So I don't think we'll at the end of the hearing, I think we will be withdrawing the request for variance relief because it's not necessary. We're not creating any new nonconformities here. My clients are stuck with the nonconformities that came with the house when they bought it. So I hope that answers Mr. Perry's question, and I'm happy to respond to any others. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Mulvihill, if you want to go next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, a couple of the questions that I have is, David, the addition is offset on the left side, on the Sansone side, and it pushes over closer to Mr. Mons. Is there a reason for that?
Well, it's intended to tie in with an existing porch and entrance on the Mon side. It will not violate the setback requirements there. It's because it will, at that point, it will not exceed 15 feet in height. So it can go as close as 10 feet on that side. And let me just ask my clients on that.
On the Sansone side, if you push there, because that's where the utilities are.
Yeah.
So that it's going to start after where all the utilities come out.
And Mrs. Fraioli has told me also that on the Sansone side of the property, the recommendation was to push it over a little because of the way the utilities come into the house. Rather than have to remove them and relocate them, it was pushed off to that side. So that, in fact, reduces the nonconformity on that side because it's pushing it away from the Sansone line. On the Mon side, the right-hand side, as you look at the house, it's actually not going beyond the existing covered porch, and it will be part of the entrance there.
David, I hate to be the contrarian here, I guess is the right word, but where is the hardship here that we have dealt with in some meetings in the past? Is there any hardship that you can show us? It looks like a pretty straightforward lot.
I'm not going to make an argument on hardship because, Mr. Chairman, because I think we're going to, and Mr. Mulvihill, we're going to withdraw any request for variance. That's the belt and suspenders approach I referred to. I think this falls squarely under section 5.4 and can be decided under that. And you don't have to make a finding of hardship there. You need to decide whether this is substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing conditions. And that's, I think, an easier decision for you.
Councilor Hearn, you said your client spoke to the neighbors. Was anybody in opposition?
No, they heard no opposition from anybody.
Okay, well, again,
neighbors they spoke with.
This is one of those cases that we've dealt with on numerous times, and my mantra is, you got a family that's been in here for 7 years. I don't know if they're originally from Norwood, if they moved here, or what their history is, but 7 years. Do they have children?
They do.
Yeah. So obviously the house they're outgrowing. Is that right, David?
That's what they tell me. I haven't been there, but I've been through this myself. So yeah, they need more space.
Well, obviously by this addition and knowing the construction costs and what this is going to entail and cost them, I think they're investing in the community that they moved to 7 years ago. And I would say wholeheartedly that we should support applications like this now and in the future, as long as they're within the parameters of the bylaw. And I think you hit the nail on the head, David. It doesn't denigrate from the intent of the bylaw, and it's in keeping with the neighborhood, because I know the neighbors down there have a lot of nice houses and they've improved them over the years. So I'd be in support of this application. Thank you, Tom.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, just going forward, if we could all just let's focus on the special permit part of the application first. We won't get into the, I think it's been established now, but let's stay away from the variance for now, since it looks like it possibly could get withdrawn at the end. Let's just stick with the special permit for now. And if we have to address the variance, we'll address that. But Mr. Riley, you're up with any questions, please.
No questions. It's pretty obvious.
Okay, perfectly stated, as always. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No questions. Again, I agree with Mr. Riley. Very, very straightforward.
Okay, good. So opening it up to the audience, Joe Mon, I know you live next door. Do you want to speak out, in one way or the other? Just don't
Yes,
forget to
please.
unmute yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah, there you go. Go ahead.
yeah, Mr. Chairman. So like you said, Joseph Mon, I'm an abutting neighbor at 107 Garfield Ave. I just want to say that no concerns or issues with the construction. Look forward to getting it going and moving forward. Like Mr. Mulvihill said, they're investing in the property and the neighborhood and the town. So look forward to moving forward. That's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
All right, great. Mr. King, I can see you. I don't know what case you're here for, but is there anybody else that has anything to say in regards to the application for 115 Garfield Ave?
I'm just one quick comment. I'm at 82 Grant Ave, which is set back behind 115. I've seen the plan. It's very nice. I know the family. It's for the right reasons. Just one, yeah, I wouldn't even say point of information, just curiosity that you guys would know. It was already a non-conforming lot, I believe. I just want to hear from you. Is that based upon, I think, Mr. Hearn, you identified it's at 25% of usage on a 10,000 square foot lot, but also the frontage. So it seems to me that they were dealing with a non-conforming lot already. And maybe you guys can explain to me, that might be the difference why you're on special permit versus variance, because it was a pre-existing condition.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to field that if you'd like.
I thought it was directed towards you, so yeah, we might
It
get
was.
it.
I think it is, Mr. Hearn.
But I'm used to speaking through the chair. I belong to another organization where that happens all the time.
No, I don't mind. You know, I'd stop it if I didn't want it. Go ahead.
The answer to Mr. King's question is that when we're, that's not me, when we're dealing with an existing non-conforming lot or non-conforming structure, as the Fraioli's house is, anytime you want to add on to it, you have to, and if you are increasing the floor area by more than 25%, the habitable floor area of the structure, then you have to request under section 5.4 relief from the zoning board and ask for a finding by way of special permit that the modification or the addition to the building will not be substantially more detrimental than the existing condition. So that's what my clients are dealing with this evening. And there are a lot of houses that fall in this category. And it may seem a little odd that when the addition conforms, as it generally does, you still have to come before the board. But this is sort of a safety valve for the board to keep an eye on things and to approve these. So that's why the Fraioli's are before the board tonight. They started with the structure and a lot that do not conform to present day requirements. And they want to add on in a way that will not violate any of those present day requirements anymore. And in fact, generally less than the existing house does. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Brendan, just to elaborate a little too, I know you're not in front of us ever that I can remember, but regardless, this is a pretty routine situation. This is a routine issue that you would come, as Dave said, it was a routine issue that would cause you to come before the board. You know, the 25% or the frontage issue, even the side issue on occasion. These are routine issues, which unfortunately triggers a zoning board hearing because the constraints of the building inspector fall into place once these issues happen. So this is basically a routine request, believe it or not. So if you're comfortable with that, we can move on.
Oh, thank you very much. You answered my question.
Okay, excellent. Do I have anybody? Okay, great, thank you. Is there anybody else who wants to speak on behalf of 115 Garfield Ave? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close.
So moved.
Motion to close.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Murphy, seconded by Mr. Riley. All those in favor to close the hearing? Actually, why don't we do a roll call vote since we're doing the Zoom again? Jack?
Yes.
Jack Perry's a yes. Pat Mulvihill?
Yes.
Bill Riley,
Yes,
and Scott Murphy.
Yes.
And the chairman's a yes as well. So 5-0 to close the hearing. Pleasure of the board, please.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman, special permit.
Second.
Second.
Okay, so I'll go with this motion approved by Mr. Mulvihill and the seconded by Mr. Murphy. All those in favor, I'll start with Mr. Murphy, please.
Yes.
Mr. Riley,
yes,
Mr. Mulvihill,
Yes.
and Mr. Perry.
Yes.
The chairman's a yes as well. So that's a 5-0 to vote in favor of the special permit. Mr. Hearn, I'll leave it up to you whether or not to withdraw the application for the variance. You're unmuted, Dave, please.
Thank you. I had to get the mouse on the right spot here. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, we'd like to withdraw the request for variance relief as being superfluous to the situation.
Okay, we do have a request to withdraw the variance request under case number 2014 located at 115 Garfield Ave. I'll entertain a motion from the board.
Move to approve the withdrawal.
second,
All right, and seconded by Mr. Riley. So all those in favor, I'll go with Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Melville,
Yes.
Mr. Riley,
yes,
and Mr. Murphy.
Yes.
And the chair is a yes as well. So 5-0, the variance is removed. And to the Frioli family, we certainly wish you well and glad you're sticking around.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Good evening now.
All right,
Now.
all right, Dave, you too. All right, so moving on. The next case, hold on one second, I lost my, there we go. All right, so the next case is case number 20-08, 973 University Ave. I have been given a request from attorney Jim Hilliard to, give me 1 second. I just want to make sure I say it right. They've asked for a continuance, and they've asked for a continuance to a date in October convenient to the board. Now, the only issue I have with this is there's several issues that are going on with this case that need to be addressed. And frankly, I'm not sure a date in October will allow them to address the issues they need to prior to that. So I think what I'll do, Ramonda, is I think either you or I can reach out to Mr. Hilliard, unless Brian Almeida, are you on regarding this case?
I am, Mr. Chairman. I'm here to answer any questions the board might have on this continuance.
All right, I tell you what, let me, from what I understand, from what I've been briefed on somewhat, there's an issue that needs to be resolved with the Conservation Commission, and I do believe there's an issue that needs to be resolved with the Planning Board. Okay, we also have a letter
Correct.
from the town plan, okay, thank you. I also have a letter from the town planner that's interesting in itself, but that also states a fact that I am actually not positive on, but I do believe Mr. Halkiotis is right in regards to the fact that since the original permit on this matter expired, we may need to do a whole new hearing on it rather than just and a whole new application rather than just a continuance on the matter. So I think why don't we agree to postpone it indefinitely, and you guys can get your ducks lined up, and we'll go from there. And once you get your ducks lined up, in the meantime, we'll figure out and we'll talk in regards to whether you have to start over or not. I'll have to refer to town council, or if Phil, you might even know what the rule is on that for certain.
just wondering, Mr. Chairman, whether it makes some sense to simply continue it to November 20. Another reason to do November is that under the consent decree in this case, as I understand it, the applicant is not permitted to proceed until all of the stormwater reconstruction is done. And I don't know what the status of that is. I did read somewhere that it would be done by November. It may have made more progress than that. But with all the issues and with the comments that the chair himself made, it seems to me that November does make more sense than October. We obviously can't meet November 3 being the election day, so the 20th might make some sense.
Right, I think the actual date is the 17th, but I would tend to agree with that.
17th,
Sure. Brian, are you comfortable with that? At least for now, we can always change it if we have.
17th is right, yeah. Sorry.
That would be rescheduling until the 17th of November, Mr.
Yeah,
Chairman?
'cause
November.
we haven't even opened this hearing yet, so we would certainly need to come up with a date to establish the potential for the opening of the hearing. So why don't we, for now, continue it to November 17th? And if things need to change from there, they can change from there, but at least for now, officially, we'll postpone it till November 17th and allow you guys some time to get everything lined up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. Have a good evening.
Okay. Phil, we don't have to vote on that, do we?
You might want to just to be, why don't I make a motion to continue it to November 17th and somebody can second it and we can vote on it if you want,
Second.
just
All
to
right, yeah,
cover
just to make
ourselves.
it official. I would agree. Yeah, I agree with that. So, all right, motion by Mr. Riley, seconded by Mr. Murphy to continue case number 20-08 to November 17th. All those in favor, Mr. Perry,
Approve?
Mr. Mulvihill,
Yes,
Mr. Riley,
Yes,
Mr. Murphy.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Almeida, just so you know too, I'm being told that we probably gonna need to notify the abutters of the change in the date. So why don't I have you contact our office tomorrow so we can square that away, but, just to be on the safe side, I think we're gonna have to do that to make sure you continue to line up all your ducks, okay?
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, so if you wanna reach out to Ramonda tomorrow, you can talk to her and you can get it all squared away in regards to notifying the butters and going from there. All righty?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Thank you, members of the board.
Yeah, thank you, buddy. Nice seeing you. Thank you. All right, next case is case number 20-15. It is 28 Cedar Street. Notice is hereby given to the zoning board with respect to property located at 28 Cedar Street in the general residence district. The meeting will be conducted digitally using GoToMeeting. Participation can be accessed through computer, tablet, or smartphone. This application requests a special permit under section 5.4.1 and 5.4.2 of the zoning bylaw to allow the installation of a 27-foot by 18-foot addition to an existing home on a non-conforming lot. All zoning requirements met except the lot size and frontage. Existing non-conformance. Percentage of building increase equals 32.1%. The application also requests a variance for under the general laws of the Commonwealth to allow the installation of a 27-foot by 18-foot additional, which I believe that should be addition, to an existing home on a non-conforming lot. All zoning requirements met, with the exception of lot size, frontage, and the percentage of the building increase is 32.1%, pursuant to section 5.4.1 and 5.4.2. Who represents on this case? Is there a lawyer on this case?
No, there isn't, sir.
Okay, so you guys represent yourselves.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, if you guys could just introduce yourselves, if you don't mind, for the record.
Can I-
and then I'll let you-
Mr. Chair, can I interrupt you for a second? Did
Sure.
Ms. Morgan tell you that I need to recuse myself in this case?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, she did. I apologize. Mr. and Mrs. Shiloh have agreed to go with a 4-person board, which would be myself, Tom Brady, the chairman, Philip Riley, Patrick Mulvihill, and Jack Perry in regards to this application. Mr. Murphy has a conflict and needs to excuse himself from the hearing. So as long as you guys are comfortable with that for the record, we're comfortable with it as well.
Okay.
All right, so I need a verbal commitment from you guys that you're comfortable with a 4-person board.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. All right, Mr. and Mrs. Shiloh, if you want to just introduce yourselves and we'll go from there.
I am Stephen Shiloh. I've lived on Cedar Street for the last 25 years. Born in Norwood, and just putting on an addition for my mother, 1 story, so she can live here with me and I can take care of her.
And I am Elizabeth Shiloh. Just, hoping to get this done for my mother-in-law, who's just turned 88 on last Friday, and we want to make sure that she's safe.
Sure, good for her. Okay. Okay, so I actually go by the property. Let me ask real quick. The addition. Now I'm looking at the drawing. I know if you're facing the house to the right, obviously you don't have the side yard to do it over there. This addition is going off to the left side?
Correct.
Left side if you're facing the house. Okay, according to the rendition here as well, so, okay. All right. And one more thing, it gives you, I'm just looking at the side yard, it would give you with the in-law addition. So it would give you 15 feet on the side, so you would have so the only thing you're missing is the frontage, which those lots are small anyways down in that neighborhood, so.
Correct.
I believe, plus you're increasing it by more than 25%, which we just went through as well. I will tell you from the beginning, the board members are gonna question you, they're gonna talk to you in regards to everything. The only thing we may, in the end, if it were to be approved, we may put a stipulation on that, I hope your mother lasts another 100 years, but we would have to object to a rental situation in the future.
Oh, no, there's
it's
not
just-
gonna be any rental situation.
No,
No,
none
no.
whatsoever.
I'm too old for
Right,
that.
but just to let you know, that probably will come up with the stipulation on the permit. But why don't we get some questions to you if anybody has some, and we'll start with Mr. Riley, please.
Just a couple of questions, folks. I assume you went to talk to the building inspector about acquiring a permit,
Correct.
and what did he tell you when you went to see him?
He told me that I have to get a plot plan, and then I have to get some plans drawn up, and then I have to go for this permit, this non-conforming lot permit.
And did he tell you why you had to come to the zoning board for a permit?
Yeah, something about the frontage, I believe.
The reason I ask that is I'm rather assuming that what happened is that he may have talked to you about the fact that the structure will be of such a size that it will be more than 25% of the present occupancy of the house. Did he mention anything about that? That's the usual reason that people have to come.
To be
Because
honest,
ordinarily, if it's a small addition that doesn't increase the occupational capacity by 25%, as was true in the first case we heard tonight, the building inspector can generally allow those himself under the bylaw. But if they're larger than that, then they're required to come to the Board of Appeal. And I'm guessing that's why the building inspector sent you here, but I'm just curious if you recall them saying that.
I spoke with him back in March,
It's
so
been so
it's
long.
been so long. It's
Lots going on since then.
Yeah, you
I'm
know,
going to assume that's probably why he wanted you to come, but that's the only question I have. Thanks.
thank you, Philip.
Mr. Mulvihill, any questions, please?
No, Mr. Chairman, just more of a comment to the Shilohs and to your point, at the beginning, of the meeting. We just had one up on Dean Street, folks. Norma Kitvana was doing an in-law addition for her sister coming back from California. And it's a standard spiel that I don't know if you're familiar with, but if you're not, then I'm sure the building inspector will tell you, or when you go to record the decision at the registry of deeds, it's going to be verbalized to you there, or I believe the building inspector does it in writing. But it's after mom passes, what are you going to do with the unit? Now, you said that you're not going to be a landlord, but when you go to convey the property, you know, in the coming years, let's say it's 25 years down the line, or whenever, if you bequeath it to your children, whoever, the unit can be used for a familial relationship, aunt, cousin, somewhere in there. But if you choose to rent this out in violation of the terms of the what I'm assuming is going to be an approval, you're going to be in violation, and there's a hefty penalty, which I won't get involved with.
You know that.
Yeah, we were informed of that,
Yeah,
Jackie.
we know that.
Yeah.
We're
No, listen, I'm too old to start renting them.
No worries at all. I just don't want you to stub your toe here, guys. You know what I mean? Because I applaud you for doing this for your ma, and you know, I think a lot of folks are in your situation, and we are going to be seeing these applications more and more and more with the cost of housing, and you know, with the baby boomer generation aging, and they want to stay in town. And you know, my hat's off to you for trying to accommodate your mother. So you're doing it for the right reasons. I just want to show the town that this isn't going to be a rental property, as Norma's wasn't on Dean Street and any others that we may approve in the future. It's not going to turn into an income producing property when in the event mom passes, and then you're sitting with, you know, an empty unit there. So I just wanted to make that clear.
I have 2 bad knees, so I would just walk myself over there and use the shower. You sort of climbing the stairs. So yeah, there's no rental here.
Yeah, my mother's sitting right here listening to you guys, so she's well aware of what's going on.
She's
Very
right
good. Thank you,
We
guys.
definitely don't want to get on her bad side, that's for sure.
No. She was born and brought up right here in
Yeah,
Norwood.
she's been here for 88 years.
Yeah,
So,
so
you
we don't
know.
want to.
God bless her. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
All right, you're welcome, buddy. Mr. Perry, anything to add, questions or so forth?
I'm pretty much in line with Packy. The first thing I thought about was the size of the addition on the non-conforming lot, and it is a large addition. I mean, it has its own porch and bath, kitchen, and the first thing I thought about, is it gonna be somewhere down the road, an apartment for rent? And if the owners sell the property, this would be a nice little addition, again, to rent. And that was my concern. I looked over the drawings. I mean, there's nothing to criticize on it, other than that was my concern. And I would do anything I could for my mother, and I would hope you would do the same for yours.
Thank you very
I would
much.
have built a bigger one for my mother, I think.
Well, you know what? We're
With
not.
a pool and slides, everything.
Yeah, there won't be any stove or anything. It'll be a kitchenette.
Because she'll eat with us.
She'll eat with
Just
us. She'll use
something-
our kitchen, you
She'll
know.
have her own
Yeah.
bath.
I did notice that there wasn't a stove over there for your mother's side.
No.
Okay, good.
No offense to my mother. I don't need her burning down the house.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, but when you do look at the drawing, I've done a lot of houses, and I would think this would be a nice conversion down the road sometime if you people sold it. And, but I can only base my decision on what has been presented, and I think it's a wonderful space for your mother.
Thank you.
All right, so seeing nothing more from the board, if we have anybody on that wants to speak out on behalf of 28 Cedar Street, please identify yourself if you would. Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to close.
Motion to close.
Second,
All right, closed by Mr. Riley and seconded by Mr. Perry. The pleasure of the board.
Want to vote on the closure?
Oh, sorry, yes, sorry about that, yes. So there's a motion to close the hearing, so why don't we start with Mr. Riley?
Yes.
Mr. Mulville. Mr. Mulville,
Yes,
Mr. Perry,
yes.
chair's a yes as well. So 4-0 motion to close. And the pleasure of the board in regards to the application.
Thank you very much.
Motion to approve the application.
Second, please. Wait a minute, Steve.
Second,
All right, so the motion is to approve. You jumped the gun there, Steve. You're a confident guy.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
Don't get your mother to yell at you yet. Stand by for a second.
Flapping
She'll
like-
double slap me.
Mr. Mulvihill has made a motion to approve the application. Mr. Riley has seconded that, so I'll do a roll call vote in regards to that. I'll start with Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Mulvihill,
Yes.
Mr. Riley,
yes.
and the chair's a yes as well. With the only, and I don't know if we'd have to vote again on this, I should have said it before, the only stipulation is that the addition will not be used as a rental income property.
Absolutely.
Understood.
So Phil, do I need another vote on that, or is that stipulation allowed?
I think as long as the applicant understands that that'll be a condition, we'll just add it in. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be a condition on the final approval, so you'll be all set there, so you're good to go. So it's a 4-0, 4-0 vote in favor. We wish you luck, and we wish your mother the best of luck as well.
Thank you very much.
Good luck, guys. Good luck.
Thanks.
Hang on just 1 second, don't hang up, Steve.
Okay.
Did you guys applied for a variance as well, correct?
You want to withdraw that.
Right, I'm just making sure you did. So Steve, you guys applied for a variance as well as a special permit. So the special permit's been approved. I'm not an attorney, so I can't advise you what to do. I think it'd be in your best interest to withdraw the application for the variance because it's unnecessary.
Okay.
Okay.
If it helps at all, I am an attorney, and what you should do is withdraw the variance. You don't need it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Withdraw.
you don't need it.
Thank you.
Yeah, why don't, yeah.
I'll make a
just for
motion
technical
that
purposes, Steve, we just
I'll make a
gotta sure
motion
we're
that the
covered.
variance be withdrawn without prejudice.
All righty.
Okay, so I have a motion from Mr. Riley, seconded by Mr. Pack.
Oh, yes, yes.
All right, seconded by Mr. Mulvihill. So all those in favor, I'll start with Mr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Mulvihill,
Yes.
Mr. Riley,
Yes,
and the chairman's a yes as well. So the application for the variance has been withdrawn. All right, Shiloh family, good luck to everything.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. All right, next case, the continuance, case number 2013, 600 Nickel Street, the split lot continued from 8/18. I am going to, I'm not gonna read through the whole thing again. I don't even actually know if I have it. Dave, why don't you tell me some solutions you've come up with since the last time we spoke, if you could, please?
All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you. For the record, David Hearn Jr. on behalf of Paul Easy, who recently purchased the property at 600 Nichols Street. We were before the board on August 18th and had a spirited discussion, I think. And it was continued to this evening at my request. And if you recall, this application actually is seeking two types of relief. We're asking in Clause A of Part 2 of the application for permission to create two lots out of one, and the lots would have less frontage and less lot width than required. And in Clause B, we're looking for relief from front setback as to Lot 5, which is a separate lot. Let me say something, though, Mr. Chairman, if I could. When we were here all together 4 weeks ago, it's possible that I may have argued a little too strenuously on the issue about creating the new lots and making reference to some of the other cases that the board has decided. I think I cited the King case on Rock Street. I did that to point out that the board in the past has found it appropriate to authorize those lots, and I thought that the present case is one of those situations. But I certainly did not intend to offend anybody by the comments, and if I was perhaps a little strong in my comments, pushing for that, I apologize. I know I cited the fact that Mr. Perry and Mr. Riley were part of those decisions, and I was trying to sway them, and I'm not sure that I perhaps was, I suspect I was a little stronger in some of the comments than I ought to have been. So I apologize for that. I've known both of them for many years and count them as friends from our dealings over the many years. So I wanted to say that, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for that opportunity. With respect to the house at 600 Nickel Street, which is Clause A of our request for relief, I do want to report, my client informs me, and by the way, Mr. Easy is here this evening, and his proposed builder, Mr. Cummins, is here too. But Mr. Easy has heard from several people who've expressed a desire to see two smaller houses built in place of the existing house. And he even heard from a nearby homeowner who expressed an interest in building a smaller one-story house on one of the lots that we had hoped to create. Having said that, I think that the board's view of the matter of dividing Lot 2 into two new lots, the board's view on that was pretty clear, and it's not likely the board is going to approve that request. So Mr. Easy has directed me to request that he be allowed to withdraw without prejudice the first of the variance requests, the one dealing with the existing Lot 2 and the existing house at 600 Nichols. So, Mr. Chairman, I would ask if the board, excuse me, if the board would allow that with request to Clause A of our requests, withdraw without prejudice.
Just so I have it right, you're gonna withdraw the Nichols application?
Yeah, the first of the two that we requested, right. The one that deals with creating two lots out of the existing, out of Lot 2. And the two lots that would have had less lot width and less frontage.
I move to approve that, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Okay, 1 second, I'm just writing it down, make sure I have it all right. Okay, so there's a motion on the floor. There's been a request by the applicant to withdraw the 600 Nickel Street application forthwith. It's been
I want to say, Mr. Chairman, when I'm referring to the house at 600 Nichols, the whole property is called 600 Nichols. So we're still dealing with a different aspect of the property. But this is, with respect to the application, it was the request under Part 2, under the variance section. It was request A, which reads, the creation of two lots, lots 2B and 2C, having less frontage and less lot width than required. That's the relief that we are seeking to withdraw. And I think
we understand that. That's the part that I was moving to the grant. Yes.
Thank you.
right. Okay, so just, and that's my bad. Just to make sure that I have it correct, I just want to make sure that I state this correctly. In regards to the application, the applicant is looking to withdraw in the variance section, looking to withdraw section A of the variance section. Am I correct on that?
That's correct. I think we're agreed.
And that's the motion.
All right. And the motion is by Mr. Riley is to accept that. Thank you,
Mr.
Buddy.
Murphy.
That was seconded by Mr. Murphy. So we'll go with the board members in regards to that withdrawal. I'll start with Mr. Murphy if I could.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Mr. Riley,
Yes.
Mr. Mulvihill,
Yes.
and Mr. Perry.
Yes, and I was so upset about trying to take that piece of property. I know it very, very well. And to create non-conforming lots would be a disaster. So this is a good way, yeah, to go.
Yeah, no, agreed on that, Jack. I think we're all on that. And Dave, for the record too, I'll speak on behalf of the board. I won't speak for anybody individual. I'll speak on behalf of the board. Your apology is certainly accepted by the board. I don't know which way it was taken and by whom, but I will say that you've been before the board many times. We do consider you a classy professional, And, you know, if any of us weren't guilty of saying something that could possibly misconstrue or were out and out wrong, then none of us would be going to church on Sunday. So we appreciate your mea culpa and definitely look forward to moving on. So if you want to continue.
I haven't been going to church on Sunday because of the virus, but I agree with your comments, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to be clear for my own notes. Did the chair vote yes on the motion? And declare it?
Yes,
think
the
we
chair
have a vote.
is. Yeah, it's a
No, we
5-0 vote. It's a
Thank
5-0 vote in regards to removing section A from the variance request.
Thank you. All right. That,
We'll continue on with the next point. That'd be great.
So that leaves us, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, focusing on the remaining request, which has to do with Lot 5. And to refresh everybody's recollection on this, Lot 5 is a lot on the Brook Street side of the property that is bounded by Brook Street, by a couple of other lots that have been approved by the planning board, heading up toward the Rotary. Lot 5 is the one all the way down heading toward Brook Street where it meets Bullard Street. And that is the lot that has an odd shape to it. It has 25,600 and some odd square feet. It has plenty of frontage, but what we're looking for with respect to that is permission to and relief from the front setback requirement. The front setback requirement in the S2 district is 30 feet. We have requested 5 feet as the front setback, and I want to explain why we're looking for that. This lot has wetlands on it. It has no build area and no disturb areas. The 50-foot no build zone comes into the lot in the area right where we'd like to put a house. If we have to, if we're bound by the 30-foot setback, the only house we can really build there is a triangular house. Now, I understand normally people might say, well, too bad, you bought it. But this is a case where the conditions we're talking about pre-exist Mr. Easy's purchase of the property. They applied to Mr. Shiguri. They'd apply to anybody who's involved in this property at any time. And the conditions that affect this lot, I think, are unique in several respects. Number one, we've got wetlands and no build and no disturb zones coming into the property significantly. If you are looking at the plans that I think you all have, you can see that while the I'll call it the westerly, it's the northerly bound of the lot is not exactly straight, but runs more or less in a fairly straight direction from Brook Street toward Nickel Street. And the line of the lot along the Brook Street right of way is straight, which that would be the westerly side. There is really no southerly side of this lot. It's an angle running from southwest to northeast at quite an angle, then jogging back and heading southeast. It's an odd shaped lot. It's affected by wetlands, and it's affected by something that I don't think affects any other lot that I can think of in our town. And it's this property had about 15,000 feet taken from it back about 1967. It was taken by the county on behalf of the town when there was an idea to build a continuation of Garden Parkway into Brook Street and then around to Albemarle Road and out to Winter Street. That was in 1967, several years before the Wetlands Protection Act came about. I told you at the last meeting that that road wouldn't be built now, and Mr. Ryan, who's our town engineer, has been the county engineer in the past, and is also our director of public works, has said to me, that's never going to get built. And under the present environmental rules, the Wetlands Protection Act and our local bylaw, the only way it could build it would be to spend a fortune and to build a bridge. That's not going to happen because of environmental concerns and economic concerns. You heard from Ms. Doyle, Cheryl Doyle, who spent many years on the Conservation Commission. At the last meeting, she commented that what we're proposing by sliding the house forward is actually a good thing from the point of view of protecting the wetlands, and also moves it away from the neighbors on Lancelot Court, from whom we're fairly far removed anyway, but it would move it even farther away. But going back to my earlier comment, this is a lot that I think is unique in that the lot line is more than 50 feet from the edge of pavement. Now, there are plenty of lot lines in our town that are 10, maybe 15 feet from the actual edge of pavement, because the takings for our roads normally are 60 feet wide. We might pave 28 or 30 feet and have room for sidewalks or trees or grass or something. But this particular taking affected this lot in such a way that had it not been done, Mr. Shigori and his successors, including Mr. Easy, would have had no problem putting a house on the lot, still well back from the pavement. So if what we're proposing is to put the house 5 feet back from that lot line, but that makes it 55 feet back from the nearest part of the pavement. And the distance increases the farther south you go along Brook Street because of the angle of the taking, the angle of the lot line rather, in comparison with the pavement. So that is a unique condition, combined with the soil conditions, the fact that there's wetlands there that limits where we can build and limits us to, without relief, really a triangular house, which on 25,000 feet, a smaller triangular house just doesn't seem to make sense. We can build a more usual type house by sliding it forward. Now, you might say 5 feet is a little too close, although frankly, nobody would even know that the 5 feet is, that at 5 feet, you know, we're somehow or other impinging on setback lines, because the average person going by is going to say, look at that house set back 50 plus feet from the road. And that's the way the road is going to remain, because of the topography there, because of the way it's built up against the pond, because of the causeway that's there. You're not going to be able to expand that road, and you're not going to do that, what somebody thought was a good idea back in the 1960s. So this is a unique situation, and I cannot think of another lot in town where the lot line is 50 feet back from the pavement, certainly not a residential lot that's in that situation. But I think we have unique conditions there that do not generally affect the zoning district, perhaps not even the town in which the property is located. Now, oftentimes a taking is not a good enough basis for relief under the Zoning Act. But you know, there are cases where you have hardships that relate from takings and soil conditions, the topography. And I would refer the board to the Lamb case, which was an appeals court case back in 2010, where the court commented that the requirement of a contiguous dry area as opposed to wetlands was not a dimensional requirement, but was related more to the topography, the placement of wetlands, and it related to the topography of the lot. That's the situation we're in here, where the topography, the wetlands, forces us closer to Brook Street than we normally would want to go. And normally, if we didn't have the wetlands, we'd be able to build 30 feet back. So that is one of the cases. There are other cases where the taking, Lamb has involved taking issues. The Adams versus Broly case involved a taking where, through no fault of the property owner, a public taking of property left the property owner, despite best efforts, unable to conform to the zoning requirements. And so, you know, when we look at what was done to this property back in 1967, we're in a unique situation that has created a real hardship. You can't build on lot 5 the type of house you normally want to build unless we can slide it forward toward that taking area that in fact was maintained by Mr. Shigori all these years. Anybody going by there would see there were boulders there. to keep cars from going off the road onto the property. It was mowed by him. It was taken care of by him all that time. And we don't propose to go into the public area, the area of the taking, except to build a driveway, which is allowed. But we're hoping to be able to build as close as 5 feet to that setback. Now, you might say 5 feet's pushing it. Well, maybe 10 feet back or something. But without the relief, we end up with a triangular house that just isn't going to appeal to anybody and makes a lot much less useful than we'd like it to be. I know that there's sometimes an argument in these cases that we've got a self-created hardship by buying the property. But I would cite you to the Crosby case, which was decided by the appeals court in 1975. The Lamb case, again, appeals court in 2010. Adams versus Broly, appeals court 1998. All of those cases point out that it's not necessarily a self-created hardship for somebody to have bought a property that might need relief. In fact, in the Lamb case, the appeals court addressed this in a way that said, the majority opinions of other jurisdictions is that somebody who buys a non-conforming lot has the same right to seek a variance as anybody else. And the act of purchasing a lot with knowledge that it might be non-conforming is not sufficient as a basis to deny the variance. If you were to say that it always is going to be, then you would have a situation, and this was pointed out by the court in the Lamb case, that only existing owners would be entitled to request a variance. Well, variances relate to the property, not to the particular owners. And that's the case we have here. And I know, many of us who deal with the stuff are familiar with the Perez case, which involved property down Rock Street and Barwood Circle. And I was familiar with that case years ago. I was involved with it tangentially to somebody on Rock Street. But that was a case where the developer was creating hardships by cutting up lots that otherwise were conforming or were more conforming and creating new nonconformities. And as I think Mr. Perry pointed out the last time we were together, that might have applied to the lot up on Nickel Street that we just withdrew that part, that request to divide that into two. You could say that the Perez case might have applied there. But with respect to Lot 5, we have a hardship. We have hardship that is not the result of Mr. Easy buying this property, not the result of anything that Mr. Shigori, the former owner, did, but is the result of the town and the county making a taking that is now never going to be built. The road is never going to be built, but which kind of squeezes in the buildable area of this lot to a very narrow spot. And I think that, the board could look at this and say, there are unique conditions. It does create a hardship. It's not of the property owner's doing. To allow the relief requested or to some level of relief, maybe not the 5 feet, maybe a 10-foot setback or something like that, would not derogate from the intent of the bylaw, because it wouldn't crowd anybody. It wouldn't interfere with traffic. It wouldn't cause any other demands upon public needs or public uses or utilities. And it would still look very nice, looking at what we propose to do. Nobody else would know that this is, nobody should be concerned that we're a little bit closer to the street than would otherwise be allowed, because we would still be 55 feet or more away from the actual street. So that, I think, I wanted to bring that to your attention. I think that that distinguishes it from some of the other cases from Perez. And those are that's the situation that Mr. Easy finds himself. Mr. Shiguri, if he had taken the time to try to divide up his property, he had plenty of it, he would have found himself in. the wetlands as they infringe upon the property, the shape of the lot because of the boundaries with the landscape property, the taking along Brook Street, and the fact that there's nowhere to put a house unless you let us slide it forward. Again, we're asking for 5 feet of setback, still be 55 feet from the road at the nearest point. But if you think some other number is more appropriate, we're happy to talk about that. And that, Mr. Chairman, I think is what I wanted to bring to the board's attention this evening, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that. I'm happy to take questions, and as I said, Mr. Easy is here and his builder is here. And, I think having disposed of the house lot up on Nickel Street, we really want to concentrate on this, and we think this stands on a different footing from some of the other cases that we've seen before. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Dave, I want to ask you a question. Did you, without saying any names, please, but did you, I know we got a copy of it. Did you get a copy from somebody in town in regards to some comments made to the Conservation Commission in regards to this application? Is it on your email possibly? Here's the bottom line. I'm not going to read this into the record because the memo itself is very confusing. And I received it about 4 o'clock this afternoon. It looks like it's dated yesterday. So when it came in, I don't know, but we have a standing rule that any comments, questions, suggestions, etc., has to be in by the Thursday prior to the meeting so we can consider these things unless there's exigent circumstances, which in this case there wasn't. But regardless, I would suggest looking at your email and seeing that some suggestions were made possibly by someone in regards to conservation if you're still going there. But regardless, I'll open it up to questions now.
Mr. Chairman, can I answer that? The Conservation Commission has already approved the development of this lot and issued orders of conditions for what would be allowed as a matter of right. If this board gives us some relief with respect to Lot 5, we'd have to go back and modify that. But I think they would find it an improvement because the relief we're looking for would pull us away from the wetlands area, farther away than we are now. As far as any late communication, I just see something that Ms. Morgan has sent me just recently.
I literally just asked you to send it to you to make sure that you had it, but you
Yeah, I haven't seen it before.
Okay.
I hadn't
All
seen
right.
it.
You know what? I'm gonna move forward, Dave. So I'm gonna open it up to questions. So I'll start with Mr. Murphy. If you have any questions on this issue, please.
Well, actually, I was going to ask Mr. Hearn a question about this memorandum that we received. So we're not discussing that, Mr. Chair? Is that your position?
The only issue the issue I have with this memorandum, without reading it into the record as of yet, is it's confusing. There's supposedly comments that were made that doesn't quote anybody who made the comments. And it's basically suggestive, which I don't have an issue with. And I certainly respect this individual's opinion. But I can't be dumped, and I'm going to say it on the record. I can't have something dumped on my lap at the last minute and expect me to figure it out. Okay, it's certainly not fair to the applicant, and it's even less fair to the board members. So if people have opinions or suggestions or anything of the sort, I would appreciate it if it was done earlier than the night before or the day of. So moving forward, if you want, I will read it into the record if you want. But
I just have a couple of questions. I wanted to ask Mr. Hearn if he had seen it because it's some interesting points that Mr. Hearn has not raised that were raised. Looks like by the writer of this memo at the Conservation Commission. That's how I read it. That he made.
You're referring to.
That's what I would assume as well. But that's part of the problem. Okay, if I assume something and I'm wrong, I look like a fool. Okay, so a phone call next time.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Yes. If I can have a moment to confer with my client, because I'm seeing this for the first time. It's referring to there is a memo from Mr. Ryan to Mr. Getz from last January, and a memo to Mr. Brady from Mr. Ryan dated yesterday. And none of this was provided to us And certainly the one from yesterday, it might be tough, if the chairman hadn't seen it yet. But if I can go offline for a moment and just ask Mr. Ricci about it, because he's got more familiarity, I think, in terms of what went on with the Concom than I do, or at least he, maybe from talking to Mr.
Right, Dave, why don't you mute yourself? Mute yourself. I'll give you 2 minutes, please.
Parisi and Mr. Cummins, if there are conditions that the DPW has that are standard, we don't have any problem. We know we have to get curb cut permits from the DPW. As far as a sidewalk running along the Brook Street side of the property, we understand that might be necessary to put it in front of our property, lots 3, 4, and 5. As far as putting it on somebody else's property, the people at the top of the street, we really don't have the authority to do that. Mr. Ryan refers to a small area, the area of the taking, I think, whether it might be a nice small park. Well, subject to a driveway that we would want going, driveways that we want going into our lots, which I don't think Mr. Ryan would deny approval for. If they want to put some benches there or something, that's up to the town, because the town would have the property. And that would not interfere really with what we're proposing, because we're not proposing to build within the public land except for a driveway. Yeah, if in fact that's done, and whether the town wants to do that or has the money to do that, I don't know. There are safety concerns there. As somebody, I travel there frequently enough, and there would be safety concerns, but leave that to the DPW and the selectmen to work out. And if they worked it out, that's up to them. They control that. If we have to build a sidewalk along our property, I guess we build the sidewalk. I do question how we could build a sidewalk beyond our property, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. We'll do what reasonably asks us to do. And we worked well with Mr. Ryan in the past. I expect we would going forward also. As far as Mr. The memo, the other memo was again from Mark Ryan to Mr. Getz back when I think the matter was before the Conservation Commission, and had some comments about drainage, keeping drainage from driveways off of Brook Street, provide drainage with proper grading, make sure there's no ponding of water. Well, those are also concerns of the Conservation Commission as well as the DPW. So my client would conform to those requirements consistent with the orders of conditions that have already been issued by the Conservation Commission. So while this is a bit of news to me, and I guess it is to some members of the board, I don't think it's anything that's fatal or that really has a significant impact upon what we're proposing to do. If we have to do it, we have to do it. I think that's all.
I don't think it does either. That's not my point. My point is again, everybody's opinion, everybody's suggestion is welcome, but just in a timely fashion. I can't, like I said, I can't have something given to me at 5 o'clock the night of the hearing and try to decipher it and figure out exactly what somebody's talking about without even having a conversation. But again, that's for me to settle. Nevertheless, Murph, does that answer your question you had?
Yeah, so I'll follow up with Mr. Hearn on that. So should I proceed with my questions, Mr. Chair?
If you would.
Certainly, please.
So, Mr. Hearn, I agree. As you know from the last hearing, I disagreed with you on lots 2A, 2B, and you took care of that by withdrawing it. I do think, based upon the variance in the case, the variance bylaw and the case law, that lot 5, you do meet the requirements for soil condition, shape, and topography. So I had a different opinion especially after going out and viewing the site again the second time. I think that you do meet condition 1 for a variance on lot 5. And obviously you meet condition 2 as well. Difference between a rectangular house or a triangular house and a regular rectangular house. One thing and I thought this before, and seeing Mr. Ryan's memo talking about putting a park there, the public good one is the one I guess we have to get by now. I thought 5 feet was too close. I think I said that to you the last time. You indicated you'd be willing to consider changing that. That might change my mind a little bit. My question to you, though, is about Mr. Ryan's memo and the thing about putting a park there. If they put a public park there, have you spoken to anybody about them putting a park? Because you did say you spoke to Mr. Ryan and they weren't going to put a road there. It was unlikely, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Nothing about a park?
It was sort of a throwaway comment that I thought he was pulling my leg a little bit when he said, hey, maybe we'll put a little park there someday. And to me, it strikes me that if you're familiar with the location, where do you park and where do you go if you're there? Cars are going back and forth on that road, and it's a narrow road to start with. But I didn't think he was serious other than perhaps pulling my leg. But I just read a memo that is dated yesterday. And so he thinks that possibly they would use some of that land. And, 5 feet might be a little too close, but I don't know, where he'd want to put it. And I don't know that the people that make those decisions, where they'd want to put it. It's because it's a function of the town DPW and engineer to make recommendations. Ultimately, I think it's a function of the selectmen to decide where they want to put these things. And I think also the question would be whether it's a use that can be made because it was taken for roadway purposes. And I don't know the answer offhand, whether something taken for roadway purposes can be turned into park area. At least not without a vote of somebody.
Well, and I will say, even going to visit the site, it was different. I had to drive by it because there were cars coming fast behind me. I couldn't even slow down to pull over, and I had to turn around. And there is no place to park. As a matter of fact, it's going to be interesting getting in and out of driveways at certain times of day, I would think, on that road because the cars are going pretty fast down Brook Street. So, is Mr. Hearn, I want to ask your opinion on whether is this something we would put these conditions that the Conservation Commission has listed, the things that DPW wants, permits for street openings, trench safety, sewer connections, and driveway access. Is that something that needs to be part of our conditions, or is that something that you have to do anyway?
Well, those aren't conservation. Those were suggestions by comments by Mr. Ryan when the matter was before the Conservation Commission several months ago. He's always going to be concerned, and the building inspector is always going to be concerned about trench safety and the other considerations. And I've got to get it in front of me again because I don't recall all those issues. Mr. Murphy, give me just a moment to get this back up on my phone. So the January memo from Mr. Ryan to Mr. Getz was that he was asking for a sidewalk. He was asking for an 8-inch water main for water service and fire protection. And driveways not to drain onto Brook Street. Those are all things that I think the Conservation Commission would agree with, and they may already have incorporated them in their orders of conditions. But street opening, trench safety, sewer connection, and driveway access, those are all conditions that have to be met in dealing with DPW, not Concom. They concern the usual construction issues that we find anytime we're building and having to cut into a public way or have a curb cut. Mr. Ryan decides on all the curb cuts. So we'd have to deal with him on that, even if it were not a zoning case.
Let me ask you, Mr. Hearn, then, based upon your earlier statement, what kind of setback would your applicant agree to, more than 5 feet, that he would be able to build the house that he wants to build there?
I hate to bid against myself, but 10 feet would get us back a little bit farther, give a little more room to everybody. We could still put something there without, we just don't want to bump up against we can't bump up against the wetlands, no build and no disturb areas. We'd like to make it a more, a house that's built with rectangles, not with a triangle.
Well, and that's my point. That's why I asked the question, because I think, I do agree. I think you meet paragraph 1 of the variance conditions, and just how far back you're willing to go to make, to comply with paragraph 2, which is, not an undue hardship. All right, those are all the questions I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Murphy. Mr. Riley, you're up, please, sir.
Thank you. Dave, I had a question about the driveway. Do you need I don't know, an easement or a prescriptive right to put the driveway over public land? I always have the impression that you couldn't just run a driveway as a matter of personal right over public land. Am I right about that?
Well, no, we have to get curb cut permission from DPW. Anytime you're building a driveway.
I know you need that, but do you need some kind of a prescriptive right to run it over public land?
No, it'll be by permission from the DPW. All of these, anywhere you go, your driveway at your house,
Yeah.
I'm sure, cuts over the public, the takings for the roads are much wider than the road is actually built. And we're always crossing public land to get out to the street from our lots. Same with whether it's on Route 1 or Brook Street or Westover Parkway or Berwick Place. That's why whenever we're building a house, we have to go through DPW to get permission for the curb cut, to make sure it's done properly and to make sure it's safe.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
That's all I have. I think the discussion that you had with Mr. Murphy, that if 10 feet is something that you can work with, that might help us out a bit. I do think that whatever we do, whether it's 5 feet or 10 feet, assuming we do that we ought to be clear that, as you pointed out, this is a very unusual, if not unique, piece of property, and that decision should be considered as pretty much confined to the facts of this case. In other words, I would hope that someone wouldn't come in and point to this case and say it's okay to put a structure 5 feet from the street, because that's not what we're doing. But as you point out, it's actually 55 feet from the street. But 10 feet might be helpful if that's something that you guys can work with. That's all I have.
Thank you. Yeah, we could do 10 feet, I suppose, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Riley. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thanks, Phil. Mr. Perry, please.
I like to have plans in front of me. That's what we do. And I've worked with Mark Ryan and everybody in the town hall. And at this time, I'm going to hold some of my comments because I have nothing to look at, no one is, and I think things are going to change.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Mr. Perry what type of plan he had in mind? Because we did file a plan that showed the proposed location 5 feet off the property line.
Do I have a copy of that?
You should, because I always file enough copies for the members.
It was in last week's folder. Everybody got
It
a
would have
copy.
been from August 18th, Jack, if you still have the paperwork from it.
I probably do,
Yeah,
but I'm
it's-
not in my office. A lot of the paperwork goes to my office. And it forwarded, as you know, my condo was totally destroyed in Norwood. And everything is being forwarded to my office. And I've been living down the Cape for the last 5 weeks. We're finally gonna get into our condo in Norwood in another week to 10 days. So I do not have that plan.
Mr. Chairman, we're not changing anything from the plan that we filed as the plan of record, except for this suggestion that we might slide it back from, to 10 feet from the 5-foot area that was proposed. And that's the only change from what we did file. But I appreciate that Mr. Perry may not have all of his files in one place under the circumstances. I know that feeling.
Okay. All right. Before I, is that, yeah, anything else, Jack?
No,
Okay, before I go to Mr. Melville, Dave, I do have one question in regards to the footings for the porch,
really
for the
don't.
deck, rather.
Yeah.
Are they, now, I'm led to believe that those are not allowed in the conservation area, correct?
Yeah, we can, Mr. Chairman, we can build the deck by the cantilever method is allowed, as long as we're not putting the posts in the no-build zone. So it would be constructed so that it's cantilevered off the structure itself, and that's how it's supported. And that does not violate the conservation rules.
All right. I just want a clarification on that, just to make sure we're on par with the Conservation Commission and their decisions as well. So, okay, I'm comfortable with that. If anybody has any questions on that, you can follow up for certain. But Mr. Mulvihill, why don't we go to you next, please?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. David, before I get into my comments / questions, Mr. Roach's letter to, I don't know what the date is on it, but it was in Ramonda's email that came over to us. He states that he doesn't have any in his research that the town or the county ever took this property. Can you clarify that?
Absolutely. If you give me a moment, let me put my hands on it. The county commissioners in February of 1967, and it's found at Norfolk Deeds Book 4415, page 437, took this property, and they listed the owners of the property affected, including a company that was owned by Mr. Shigori. The title was then held in that name, and several other owners. Lakeview Estates was Mr. Shigori property along Brook Street, 15,980 feet, and $300 he was paid for it. The Archbishop of Boston, the Roman Catholic Archbishop of Boston, had about 40,000 feet taken and was paid about a little over 2,000. So it was taken from Mr. Shigori. It's on record, book 4415, page 437.
Okay. It was taken by the county, but who owns it now?
Town, taken by the county for the benefit of the town.
Okay, so if I'm Mr. Shigori or his successors are now Mr. Easy, and I buy the property, and I understand that the county took the property for the reasoning to widen Garden Parkway to make it almost like a VFW parkway. Is that what the original plan was, David, to make a green ring around the town of Norwood?
It wasn't so much to widen Garden Parkway as to connect the Garden Parkway to Brook Street, and then take Brook Street over to Albemarle Road. Albemarle Road has a stub end, but it connects to what is now, I think, a walking path that goes out to Winter Street. So
Yeah.
I'm told that the idea was to create a ring road running from Route 1A all the way around that side of town and come out on Winter Street.
Okay,
And,
so,
so they took a lot of land there, and they took some where Brook Street comes over to Albemarle Road by the north parking lot of St. Timothy's.
so that would lead me to my next statement. If they took the land and they never used it for its initial purposes that they took it for, which was to widen the road, the comment from Mr. Ryan, who is a very dear friend of mine, just falls flat, that the town would actually take a piece of property that was initially taken for a roadway and make it a park with what Mr. Murphy correctly stated is absolutely zero parking, zero access. You have to take your life into your hands walking down that road because there are no sidewalks. It doesn't make any sense. And if I was the owner of it and the town pursued this, I would, with all due respect to you, David, I would probably go get a Hale and Dorr or a Foley and Hoag or somebody in Boston to take the town to task for, using the land not for its intended purposes when they took it. That's just a side commentary. Basically, everything has been said, Mr. Chairman, through Councilor Hearn regarding the particular lot on Lot 5. Phil Riley's comments are absolutely spot on, in my opinion. It's a unique situation here that in my years on the planning board and my years now on the zoning board, I've never seen this, and I doubt, knowing the town like we all do, I doubt that we'll ever see a piece of property like this or a situation like this again. You can never say never. We've all been around too long to know that. You never say never. But in my humble opinion, with the years that I have on here, I'd be hard pressed to say or we're going to see it again. That being said, 58 feet or 50 some odd feet from the roadway is something that, very few homes in our town have. There are a lot of homes that have it, but if this is approved at 5 feet or even 10 feet, it's 50 some odd feet from the actual roadway, which in my opinion, certainly meets the standards, as well as the hardship that Mr. Murphy eloquently said Mr. East's lot, or this particular lot, takes into account, as well as Cheryl Doyle. Cheryl was on the conservation for years. This particular development, Mrs. Susan Shiguri, I think she has a married name. She's not Susan Shiguri anymore. But when she actually went and made application in front of the planning board and the conservation commission, she argued this, and it went ad infinitum, went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and the conservation commission and the planning board approved it. So yeah, it is an extremely weird looking lot that, and I don't know how you would fit a house on that particular triangle, but it cries out for relief because again, the wetlands have decimated that particular lot area. And again, I've walked the property, I've seen the property, I've been up there 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago when Jack's condo got flooded out and the hospital got flooded out and that property was dry. So, I mean, I don't know if it's a sustainable 3 week rain or 4 week rain that the wetlands come into play up there and that land gets wet, but it was dry when we all got flooded. And, that's for a botanist and another engine to figure out. The road's
Hey, Pat, let me interrupt you for 1 second. Whoever caller 5 is, if there's somebody else on the line that's recently jumped in, I've asked that everybody who's a non-board member to please mute your phones or mute your screens because you're interrupting the statement, please. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the road's never going to be built, okay? It's never going to be widened. David said last time, and I think Mark even said, they'd have to build a bridge. They'd have to, major construction on the dam where the overpass is on the outlet there from New Pond into the brook that leads in behind the KSC and the Sportsman Club. So again, I think it meets the criteria for relief. It's a question of whether the board, says yes to 5 feet or 10 feet. I quite honestly, I could care less, but I think this meets the criteria. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, anything further from the board? All right, seeing none, I'm going to open it up. Mr. Roach, you've been waiting patiently. Why don't I go with you first? If you could identify yourself again with your name and address, please. You gotta unmute yourself, Mr. Roach, please.
John Roach, 29 Lancelot Court. Mr. Chairman, the only comment I have now, I'm not even going to read my memo, is have easements been granted for all those driveways? 3 driveways. And they don't, it does not sound like a curb cut. Curb cut is a few feet, couple of feet. It's not 50 feet. That's not a curb cut.
I actually can't answer your question, but I'm gonna defer to Mr. Kern if you would.
Yep, Mr. Chairman, we don't need easements for the driveways. This is,
Why
quite
not?
common that,
Hold on, let him speak, Mr. Roach. Let him speak.
this is quite common. People who have property on a public way have an absolute right to access the public way, subject to normal safety concerns, and that's why the head of the DPW has the responsibility to approve the curb cuts. As far as the length of the driveway, it depends upon how far back a lot is from the traveled or paved way. In this case, this lot is a minimum of 50 feet back from the way, and in fact, it's farther back, the farther down Brook Street you go. If you were to go out to Route 1, there are driveways that cross the public land probably nearly as long as this because of the takings that were made for Route 1 by the Commonwealth. And so it's not unusual, it's not unheard of. It doesn't require an easement. It requires permission from the DPW so that property owners and taxpayers can access the public roads that they're paying for. Thank you.
But if I can, this is not Route 1. This is public property owned by the town. Is that right?
But Mr. Chairman, I don't know if Lancelot Court is a public way, but if it is a public way, then Mr. Roach's driveway crosses the public property to get out to the street. It's no different from that.
What's it got to do with my property at all?
All right, I'm not gonna let that go.
We're
I'm not
talking
gonna let
about
that go.
5.
Mr. Roach, you gotta move on to your next statement, please. If you have one.
Well, I'm done.
There is somebody else on the line. Caller 5 is what I'm seeing. If you could identify yourself, if you have something to say in regards to this, your name and address, please.
I'm not sure if I'm caller 5, but this is Catherine Collins, 28 Canterbury Drive.
That's all right, continue. please.
Comment is that I would appreciate the park because for all of us walkers who will be using the sidewalk on Brook Street, would love a place to sit. I don't think that any of us would be driving there, or anybody in town would be using their cars to drive there.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else, Mrs. Collins?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else on the line that would like to comment on this matter? Okay, seeing none. Dave, I'll make a motion I'll entertain a motion in a moment. The only thing I'm gonna ask is, regardless of how this goes, I am gonna ask within a time frame that I get advised plans showing the 10-foot pushback as opposed to the 5-foot pushback, and that the footings are cantilevered, if I'm pronouncing that right. I just need that official for the record.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we're happy to file, if the board approves it at 10 feet, we're happy to file a revised plan. And I think you could make it a condition that the decision waits upon the filing of a plan that reflects the condition of 10 feet if the board approves that. With respect to the location of the deck and the wetlands, that's already covered by the conservation decision and their rules. We can do it, I guess, but that's actually within their jurisdiction not to build or put anything within the 50-foot no build. That's not a zoning issue so much as a wetlands issue. So I hadn't planned to do that. I had, because it's a construction drawing as opposed to a placement of the lot. But if the board feels that's necessary, I guess we can file a separate sketch that would show how you construct a deck, a cantilever deck, as opposed to a deck with posts. It would be, so it's not so much a plan of this property as a sketch that shows how we would do it, and you could put a condition in that would probably mimic what the Concom has, that there to be no posts in the wetland delineation, wetland no build zone. We can do that, Mr. Chairman. So a revised plan to show the 10-foot setback and sketches that show the cantilevered construction of the deck. Those would be construction drawings rather than an engineer's plot of the lot. A plot of the lot doesn't really show it. So is that,
I'm good with that. That's what, I'm not looking to, make a mountain out of a molehill. Like I said, as long as you can give us a sketch showing that the deck will be cantilevered, I think we'd be fine. I just want to make sure that the Conservation Commission's rulings are adhered to. That's all.
Yep,
I'm
okay.
more interested with the plans reflecting that it's a 10-foot setback as opposed to a 5-foot setback.
Yep,
More
that's fine.
importantly for the record. So, is there anything else from any of the audience that wishes to speak on this case? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a decision of the board, a motion from the board in regards to what the pleasure is.
Which want to close the hearing?
All right, buddy, I'm tired. Yes, sir. Why don't we entertain a motion to close while I'm at it first?
Motion to close, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Seconded by Mr. Riley. So the motion on the floor to close the hearing. All those in favor, I'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Murphy?
Yes.
Mr. Melville?
Yes.
And Mr. Riley?
Yes.
And the chair is a yes as well. So 5-0 vote, motion to close. The pleasure of the board, please.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the variance under the application Part B, as A was withdrawn. So Part B of the application with it amended to show a 10-foot setback as opposed to a 5-foot setback. I'd make that motion.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, thank you. And David, I'm going to add to that just a bit. If I give you 2 weeks, is that enough time for it to submit new plans to reflect that?
Yes, that's fine. And Mr. Chairman, procedurally, if the board votes for this, then you'll just have it as a condition. We'll file it with Ms. Morgan. And she can notify the chair that it's been filed so that the decision can be released to the clerk, to the town clerk. Is that how we'll do it, Mr.? We don't need to have another meeting with the board, do we, to have the plan?
No, you don't. But hold on 1 second, because I'm being told by my coach. You need to give us 1 week from receipt of the plan to file the decision. We have to file the decisions within 14 days of the decision. Okay, so let's change the 2 weeks to 1 week, if you could, please.
That's fine. 1 week for the
Okay,
plan
Thank you.
and sketch. Just come up with a sketch.
So
That's
1
fine.
week to the plan. So there's a motion on the floor to approve Part B of the variance with the amendment that there's a 10-foot setback as opposed to the original 5-foot setback, with 1 week being granted to get new plans in reflecting this. And the motion is made by Mr. Murphy. Is there a second?
Yes, I seconded it, Chairman.
All right, seconded by Mr. Riley. Thank you. So all those in favor, I'll start with Mr. Mulville.
Yes.
Mr. Riley.
Sorry,
Riley.
Oh, yes.
You, Phil. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Murphy
Yes.
and Mr. Perry.
Yes.
And the chairman is a yes as well. So 5-0 vote in favor. So David, thank you. And if you could thank Mr. Easy as well on behalf of the board, and we wish you luck on the project.
Thank you very much, everybody. All right, good evening.
All right, good evening.
All right.
And, gentlemen, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. All right, 5-0. We'll go on that one. Good to see everybody as always. I know we're still adjusting, but always everybody, I'm glad everybody looks good, feels good. We definitely need to
This
wish our
conference
MVP.
is no longer being recorded.
Her MVP's birthday was the other day. I think she's trying to hide the fact because I think she just turned 30. But if we could all wish our MVP, we could all wish our MVP a happy birthday. I'm sure she'd appreciate it.
Happy birthday, Ramonda.
Birthday.
Ramonda, one of these days, you're gonna have to let your picture be on the broadcast.
It's never gonna happen,
Hey,
ever.
Ramonda,
Thank you.
Ramonda,
She's Charlie from Charlie's Angels.
That's
hey,
right.
Ramonda, while we're all together here, can I ask you a question that I asked you in private, but can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Are we ever gonna go back to a formal meeting at the town hall, or is this something that the town is gonna be incorporating as permanent?
That I can't really speak to. Right now, for the indefinite future, it's looking like it's going to be a virtual meeting.
Okay, and then second, I appreciate that. And secondly, I'm speaking for just myself here. But the memorandum from the Economic Planning Department and the director, just put it in the round file, please. And I think we can, take care of ourselves, and his input is welcomed, but certainly it's something that we'll take under advisement. But
All right.
I'm going to be polite there.
All right, all. Always a pleasure and job well done as always. I know we all volunteer to do this stuff, but we take it seriously. And I think we all have our best interests in the town at heart when we do so. So I appreciate your guidance as well. I'm still the rookie, so I thank for all I'm very appreciative of all my coaches. All right?
Take care. Bye, all.
Good night, everybody.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, have a good night.
It's good to see you guys.
Good enough.